Amazon EC2 performs automated checks on each running EC2 instance to identify hardware and software issues. So, if we look at this Linux server instance, we see that there's a status check column, and in this case, those checks have passed. If we go to the Status and Alarms tab, these are EC2 status checks, and they run every minute and even return a pass or fail status. If all is well, it tells us here as an OK or passed checks. However, if one or more checks fail, the overall status is set to damaged. Now, we have system status checks and instance status checks. The system health checks verifies that the instance is accessible. Amazon EC2 checks if network packets can reach the instance. If this check is not successful, there may be a problem with the infrastructure hosting the instance. For example, AWS software, networking or power systems. Just think that when it is a system's health issue, it is related to something that AWS needs to fix. The instance health checks verifies whether the instance's operating system is accepting traffic. If this check fails, you may need to restart the instance or modify the operating system configuration of that instance. So, these are more problems involving the operating system. You can't enable or disable health checks, but you can create or remove alarms that are triggered based on the outcome of the health checks. And that's something we'll get to in a moment. If we go to the Monitoring tab, we can see basic monitoring metrics. That is, the metrics are updated with a frequency of 5 minutes. Now, if we want more frequent metrics, 1 minute, for example, we can enable detailed metrics using CloudWatch, but note that this will have an additional cost. Now, CloudWatch is the service that is used to monitor, so it reports operational information using metrics that are collected from services within AWS. So, to see how this monitoring works and the issue of alarms, let's enable an alarm that is triggered when our CPU utilization, for example, reaches a certain threshold. To do this, from the Status and Alarms tab, we click on Actions and create Status Check Alarm. I'm going to leave it at Create an Alarm. I'm not going to need Amazon SNS at the moment. Amazon SNS, simple notification service, what it does is, it notifies us by email or SMS. For example, when an event occurs to which we are subscribed. In Alarm Action, I can configure the alarm to perform a specific action when triggered. So, I can configure a threshold at 80% of CPU utilization so that when it reaches that value, the alarm takes as action to stop the instance. That is to say, to shut down. Below is where I configure that threshold. I'm going to leave it an average. The data type in CPU utilization, although we can choose others from the list. But for this example, I will leave it in CPU utilization. Here I'm going to tell it to trigger the alarm when it is greater than or equal to 80%. Here in period, notice that the minimum is 5 minutes. If I had CloudWatch detailed metrics enabled, which I have to pay for, I would have the option here to choose 1 minute. I'm going to leave it at 5 minutes. Leave that same alarm name and click Create. And already our alarm has been created. Now, here next to the Instance Status Checks, if we click on View Alarms, we can see the one we just created. Here it may say that there is not enough data while collecting data, or if it is all correct, it means that everything is working fine on this instance as such. We can click on the link. And this takes us to the CloudWatch service where we can see more information on all of this. Down here under the Actions tab, we can see that action will be to stop the instance when the CPU has 80% utilization or more of its usage. So what we will do now is put this to the test. We're going to stress test our instance to see how our newly created alarm works, and we can take a closer look at that information. I'm going to go to My Instances. I've already selected the instance. I'll tell you up here to connect and connect. Here, what I am going to do initially is run this command, sudo yung install stress-y. Press enter once. This stress tool is a command line utility in Linux that allows you to load and stress a computer system such as CPU, memory, disk, etc. So I'm going to clear my screen. Now, if I type stress-help, we have a number of command line options that we can apply. What I'm going to do is run stress-C8. And what this C command does is, it generates a certain amount of workers, and that's going to generate quite a load on the CPU. So, let's go back to our console. Click on the Monitoring tab. Notice that the CPU utilization has changed a little bit. I'm going to click here on the 3 dots and tell it to look at metrics to see it in more detail in CloudWatch. So, because we only have basic CloudWatch monitoring, it will only detect some anomaly every 5 minutes. If I go to all alarms, notice that everything is correct. I'm going to wait about 5 minutes until the alarm status changes so we can see more information. Well, after a few minutes, notice now that the alarm is in alert mode. This CPU usage passed the 80% threshold and the alarm was triggered. If I go to my instance and refresh, notice now in the alarm status column that there is an active alarm. And if you look at the instance status, notice that it is in stopped. So, as you could see, the instance reached 80% CPU utilization and an alarm was triggered to automatically stop it. If I go to the Status and Alarms tab, and we see the Alarms section, we can see that notification. See you next time.